I don't smoke, but if I walked through the streets of New Delhi today, not only would it be hard to see through the smog, it would also be as if I've smoked 50 cigarettes. Pollution is at unbearable levels, and according to the capital's chief minister, being in Delhi is like living in a gas chamber. Schools have been shut down, cars taken off the road, and millions are being forced to wear protective masks. So, who's responsible for India's toxic atmosphere? The Supreme Court says state governments are to blame. It accuses them of being more interested in gimmicks and winning elections than actually tackling the issue. And it seems many in the capital agree. Journalist Ishan Russell is in New Delhi, where protesters have gathered to demand something be done about the pollution.
We are here at India Gate, where citizens of Delhi have gathered to protest against the pollution and what they allege is the lack of apathy from the government, both the state government and the central government, to take action on this particular issue. And that is something that is really bothering them, because the air was a lot clearer today than it has been over the past 48 to 72 hours. But still, it's of a very unhealthy quality. On the air quality index, it's around 200, where a normal should be between 20 to 30. So that is the extent of air pollution that the residents of Delhi have been fighting with on a daily basis. And they're out here to protest right now, to ask the government to take action, to take concerted action, because that is what it requires. This problem is spread over many states in North India, Punjab, Haryana, and of course the farm fires over there, the smoke from there is billowing into Delhi. So that is what is causing this pollution from an added perspective, other than the vehicular pollution and other factors.
Well, as we just heard, India's problem of pollution isn't limited to New Delhi. Of the 30 worst polluted cities in the world, 22 are in India. Why and what's the solution? Well, to help answer that, I'm joined now from Sambalpur in India's state of Odisha by Ranjan Panda. He's a convener at the Combat Climate Change Network in India. And in New Delhi is Avikal Somvanshi. He's an urbanologist and a program manager for the Sustainable Cities program at the Center for Science and Environment. Gentlemen, good to have you both on the program. Ranjan Panda, who's to blame? Is it simple enough to actually pin the blame on the government?
I don't think, but the governments are responsible for the policy making. So they have had enough time to make policies. And there is one thing that we need to understand now is India is a federal structure government. And when you see conservation issues, when you see this kind of pollution issues, when you see river management issues, the federal cooperation is virtually missing in India. Otherwise, this problem could have been tackled so far as the stubble burning is concerned.
Right.
I think for that there's a huge political will that is lacking. I think politicians should now look more beyond the votes and winning elections than actually cooperating on conservation and air pollution, because that is going to kill a lot of Indians. There's already reducing the productivity of the youth, and in fact is huge issues considering the fact that India fastly moving into urban areas. So and if Delhi kind of cities face this kind of problem, then we are actually in a problem. We are actually in a huge crisis.
Right.
Not only today, but by 2030, when you see a lot of people will be in the cities, trying for employment, as because the rural areas are already, already failing to provide employment to the people. So everybody is moving to cities.
Right.
And that's city pollution combined with this kind.
Right, and that's a big problem here, right? And I'm interested in hearing what the urbanologist has to say about this, because this is a natural trend, right? As the country develops more and more, people move towards the cities. Have we had enough evidence now over the past few days that the leadership is taking this very seriously? So we've had the Supreme Court say the government's to blame. We have the chief minister saying it's like a gas chamber. I mean, some people would find that really offensive, but it definitely shows that they are freaking out to an extent. So both for the present and the future, Have we had enough evidence that the government is finally taking this seriously?
So
You're
let
asking
me
me?
add to it. It's just not this year which this has happened, and it has been it's a regular phenomena. Delhi and adjoining regions have high pollution throughout the year, and during this specific period when the temperatures fall and the wind speed is low, it starts to get it becomes visible, and it starts to become more concentrated, and the forest fires in the fires in the paddy fields in northern India adds to this load. So it has become a big problem now, and it will continue to remain a problem as the temperature drops and the wind speed gets lower. Because of that, the pollutants generated within the city and coming from outside the city linger on, they don't dissipate, and they move away. So it becomes what the chief minister called it, into a gas chamber during this period. But problem is there throughout the year, and it's an issue of how we are doing our development and urbanization. The way we are building our cities, the way we are providing infrastructure and amenities which the modern India needs is problematic, and that's one of the reasons of why we are in this situation. We don't have enough public transport, so people are dependent upon private vehicles and to commute, which is one of the major local sources of pollution.
Right.
Then the technology we have and the quality of fuel we have in this country is also of a serious concern. Then we talk about other sources of pollution, which is like burning of waste, whether it's the agricultural waste in the field or the domestic waste and municipal waste within the city that adds to the thing. So overall, city governance and larger all waste management in this country has become a big issue. Then there is the issue of power generation. So we are still relying on coal power based plants to supply electricity to the city, and there are multiple power plants in this vicinity, in this region, and also a lot of the households and colonies and businesses depend upon diesel generators to generate their own power, because the state is not able to provide 24/7 electricity. So all this adds up to the pollution which is being generated, and you take into account the adverse atmospheric conditions which developed during this period, which results in a smog. Yes, it's a failure on all the governments, whether it's central government, the state government, or the city government, because they are not able to provide the infrastructure. But it's also the failure on side of people as well, because they are not taking care of the things they do. Whether it is the waste generation at the home, how they deal with it, the choice of commute they make, and things like that.
Okay.
So it's a failure at all the levels, and there needs to be check and balances and course correction from citizens to the governments.
Yeah, systemic
tackle this
failure.
problem.
Certainly seems to be systemic failure. So Ranjan Panda, the government can close schools, it can hand out face masks, it can restrict traffic on the roads, it can do all of this, but is the bitter reality that India needs to change its entire economy and the way it approaches it in order to tackle this properly?
Yeah. Yeah, I think today only I blogged. You cannot buy clear sky. You cannot buy blue sky. You can have money. You can have a GDP centric growth, but buying clear sky is absolutely not your forte. So I think exactly that is the problem. Development, the way we are developing, and I think people definitely need to take a lot of choices. But then the policymakers have to take the responsibility, and they must, look into all the policy and all the kind of development priorities that they are making, both in the cities and the North Indian states that are being blamed. For example, a policy or water policy in 2009 in Punjab changed the timing of the paddy, the sowing of the paddy, the harvesting, making this problem in November much more severe than before. That's why I said federalism in a way has failed in India when it comes to, working together on these kind of issues. So that needs to be properly tackled now.
Right.
Of course, looking into the history of how we manage our garbage, like Supreme Court, nobody listens to Supreme Court. You see the The problem with garbage management in Delhi only, Supreme Court has been sort of wrapping the government time and again, but that remains as such. You see the knee-jerk, reactions in a heat wave, for example. That's something that has been striking India, and increasingly. The same is happening. Schools are closed in the heat wave prone regions. But then nobody talks about climate change. Nobody talks about how urban forests can be conserved. I think mitigation measures are something that now needs to be looked into,
Right.
rather than knee-jerk, sort of responses to disasters.
Okay.
So I think the same needs to be looked into in this case as well.
Okay, and as my final question to you, Avikal, and if you could keep your answer very brief, I would appreciate that. For those who say, well, look at China, look at Beijing and Shanghai, and look at the Europeans 100 years ago, or more, Victorian Britain and so on, that was polluted. This is just the price you pay for development. How do you respond to them?
You are correct. This is a price
talking
we
to
pay
me?
for development. But as you said earlier, European cities have done it 100 years ago. Chinese have done it recently. And we know what mistakes they made. And the question we need to ask, why are we repeating those mistakes? Why haven't we learned from them and take a different course of action so that we don't have to suffer the way we are suffering now? And we know how the remedies are. There have been examples from around the world. And we need to start reflecting on those and adopt them in the way we are doing development now and how we are framing the policies.
Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure talking to you here on the Newsmakers. I thank you so much for joining us.